What's up, guys? Welcome to Blue Presents a Podcast. I'm your host, Blue Rivera, and today on my show, I'm talking to Ricky, Dan, and Adam of the band Fallen Monarch, and you're going to get to know a little bit about them coming from the Boston area, as well as you get to learn about their EP, Turmoil, which they recorded and put together during the pandemic. This is a great conversation and another artist that I feel is really awesome, and I really hope that you guys check them out. Before we get started, though, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has continued to listen on my hiatus. There's been a lot going on, bought a home, been dealing with family things, and just really excited to get back to podcasting. And once again, man, if you guys would like to be a guest on my show or you have a show idea, you can hit me up on Facebook at Blue Presents a Podcast, or you can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Podcast of Blue. Before we get started, man, the gentlemen from Fallen Monarch have graced us with their latest single, Chain of Grief. Let's sit back, relax, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
There's no life, there's no one. Why am I
What's up, guys? Welcome to Blue Presents a podcast where I discuss all things music and how it affects my life. And today I'm joined by three gentlemen from the band Fallen Monarchy. I'm joined by Adam, the vocalist, Dan, the guitarist, and Ricky, the other guitarist. How are you gentlemen doing today?
We're good, man.
Doing great.
Oh, no worries, man. So usually I ask, what are your top 5 artists? But since there's 3 of you, man, why don't you guys just give me a band that's really just influenced you personally?
I mean, being the vocalist, I think probably I'll go towards like vocal style, and I'd say probably biggest, especially in this project, influence on me personally would be Poison the Well.
Okay.
Just in terms of, I mean, one of my all-time favorite bands anyway, but very much like, just interest. He has such interesting, and Jeff has such interesting inflection with his voice in terms of just something that's always resonated very much with me in terms of vocal performance is the emotion put forth through it, and he just has that intensity and wavers without necessarily relying on the styles of like extreme vocals that you would find in a lot of like black and death metal, which obviously they're metalcore band, but still like that's just the kind of stuff style that's always resonated more with me, and something I try to express more with my own performances, especially in this band with Fallen Monarch.
Yeah, and I would say it's interesting you asked that. I don't know if I could say any one band influences me in terms of the riffs I write for Fallen Monarch, but one thing actually Adam and I were talking about right before this is one of the guitarists that have influenced me and that got me to play guitar from the beginning, and I might get a lot of shit for this sometimes, but is Wes Borland, actually.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, from Limp Bizkit. Like, honestly, these tattoos I have on my arms, F-holes, I got them because of Wes Borland when I was 15. Hearing drop tune guitars, hearing kind of like slamming riffs with like cool, creepy ambient leads. And then his whole shtick of not only writing the music, but he's like a phenomenal oil painter, and just like the all-around creativity he brings is something that I grew up painting. And when I saw him playing guitar, I was like, oh my God, like I want to throw down and play like that. So I think that from a fundamental level of like, he uses a lot of great like natural harmonics, like low tune riffs with harmonics in between. We have a lot of that in some of our songs, but I would say Wes Borland is a big influence on me.
You got those tattoos when you were 15?
No, that was much later. I was like,
I was gonna say, like, wow,
what tattoo parlor needs to be in some trouble right now?
Let's say, well, Colorado has loose tattoo laws apparently.
Name not the artist.
Exactly.
But yeah, so for me, definitely easy answer for that is Metallica. They were the first band that got me into metal. It's a pretty, fairly common answer. You might hear, but I heard like just the kind of riffs that they would write, and specifically the album Master of Puppets was really what got me from kind of a more like rock like influences that I had early on, and that's when I really got into the heavier stuff, was listening to that and the Ride the Lightning album, and just listening to James and obviously the right hand hammer that he's got going on. I always wanted to emulate that in my playing, and it kind of got me to where I'm at now with my style. And that's kind of where I came from, was just starting with listening to Metallica, like a lot of people.
Yeah, man. Ricky, I really like your answer though. Like that's like so intuitive when it comes to like artistry. Like sometimes we forget that people who play in music are more than just music. Do any of you guys have like any type of like talents? Ricky, you said painting, you've been painting, so do any of you guys have any hidden talents outside of just making music?
Yeah, I mean, both Ricky and I are graphic artists. We actually did our EP cover. Ricky did the digital painting of the character, and I designed our logo and kind of provided the art direction, layout of everything. So Ricky's background's in like video game concept art, right?
Yeah. So I grew up, like, long story short, I've always been into like visual arts, but I grew up in West Virginia and went to school in Colorado and got into metal there. But then I moved to Boston, Massachusetts area for my first job, which was a concept artist for an indie game company called Greenbrier Games. We made a game called Z-Pocalypse, which is like a post-apocalyptic survival game. And I kind of moved from oil painting to digital painting in Photoshop in that time period. And so any music project I've been involved in, I've always loved at least helping out with the art. So when I got involved in Fallen Monarch with Adam, he's also a great artist. Doing the EP cover, if you check it out, was something that was like collaborative with the whole group, like doing thumbnails, going back and forth on the vibe we wanted. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been super fun. I similarly in every band I've ever been in have been, pretty much the only person in charge of sort of the visual identity with the art direction and, doing logos, album art, merch, all that kind of stuff. So now playing with Ricky, it's really cool taking a much more collaborative approach to it. And really, I'm always a big fan when we're able to do that kind of work internally within the band, since it allows us to really extend that aesthetic vision we have for how the material should be represented visually. And so it's been super fun. And I mean, we haven't had a chance to do a ton yet, still being relatively new. We kind of just have the EP cover and have built pretty much our visual presence just based off that thus far, since that's what we're promoting. But as we, I think, get into later this year and look into recording our first full length and kind of the art surrounding that and developing more like merchandising campaigns around it and everything, I think we'll really start to be able to explore our visual identity a little bit more, which we have been able to do a little bit collaboratively. We worked with Anthony Jarvis at Punch Dance Studios to do our first video for Chain of Grief. And, he's a very good friend of mine. I've worked with him multiple times across multiple bands. He's very, very good at what he does. And so it was great for him to really take the time to talk to us, learn the vibe of thematically what the band is about, visually what the band is about, and to kind of capture that with the video as well. Like he did some cool, even like animated our logo for the beginning of the video, and kind of went above and beyond with that to kind of help us start to set more of a vibe. And I know I just mentioned it's great to do as much of that stuff internally as we can. I also love finding the right people to collaborate with outside of the band to kind of bring their perspective in, and the people who really want to help us capture that vision of what we're trying to go for. It's always a super fun thing to do. And thankfully, from I think the five of us doing this for so long, we know a decent amount of people to reach out to work with us on things like that.
And I definitely think that's a positive thing to have, because I feel like if you don't have somebody who believes in exactly what you're doing and what you're trying to bring to life, you're not going to end up with the product that you're really looking for, or maybe not even visually or sound quality wise too, because I feel like it goes hand in hand with producers as well as it goes with shooting music videos. If you don't have somebody who understands the vision or is passionate enough to understand, listen, let's get this right the first time out, you're not going to get that type of stuff, because there's plenty of people out here who offer absorptive amounts for producing, and I understand, what it costs, but if you're not going to provide something of yourself to help the band accelerate themselves, because this is another thing that I talk about with a lot of my friends in music is we as artists are so close to our material that sometimes we may not see things on the outside. So it's nice to have a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ears to kind of give you a direction and maybe a lane you may not have been envisioning from what you were doing, So since we are talking about, all these collaborative things and, that you guys are fairly new, let's talk about how you guys got started, man. And I think it's crazy that you guys started basically during the pandemic in 2020. So how did you guys get started in a time where everybody should have stayed the fuck away from each other?
I mean, we kind of did stay away from each other. Because it's funny that our bass player Jim isn't here on the conversation today, but he was honestly kind of the catalyst of first getting this band together. Because I know I believe it was you, Ricky, that was the first person I reached out to, right?
Yeah. So it's a funny story. We actually, the band Fallen Monarch that is today formed basically like right before during Corona, but it initially formed in 2019, September of 2019. I actually went before this podcast to look at my messages to see when exactly it happened, because I couldn't remember. But it's funny. I was at Planet Fitness getting my pump on, and it's hilarious. I was like sitting there with headphones, like listening to metal in I think Waltham. And I'm sitting on a bench, just doing like a bench press by myself, don't have a spot or anything. And this guy is like tapping me on the shoulder, like right as I'm finishing up, and it was Jimmy, our bassist at the time. I didn't know who he was. And he's like, hey man, I was wearing I wrestled a bear once shirt. And he's like, hey man.
We know our own kind.
Yeah, exactly. He walked up and he's like, I see your tattoos and shirt. Do you play music? And I was like, yeah, dude, I play guitar. And I had actually just moved here from Denver. And he's like, oh, sick. He's like, I don't want this to be like awkward, but I'm like trying to get a group together to like write music. Are you interested? And I was like, sure. And then I didn't hear from him. I gave him my contact information, and then I didn't hear from him for a little bit. And then he just randomly texted me. That was after he found our drummer, Kyle, who's also not here.
Yeah.
And a vocalist that we're not with anymore, but we all kind of met initially. And then if you want to take it from there, it kind of just went
Who was the singer you guys were working with?
We never even had an official practice with him. He only showed up to like 2. And
I do think I remember Jim mentioning this to me.
It was just kind of like he wasn't really into the vibe of the kind of music direction we were going. Totally cool. So very early on split, and then I think Jim reached out to you. Right?
Yeah, Jim reached out to me because he and I have known each other for a bit. Our old bands had played together, probably a decade ago, and just sort of kept in touch over the years. And I had done. I'm typically a guitar player. But I had, back in 2013, I was involved in a brief project called I Invent, and did vocals in that band. And I know Jim had heard it and really, really liked my vocal style and had reached out to me actually once before over the years. I think that's probably like 2015 or so. He and I played briefly in another project that just never really got off the ground, as I'm sure you know, so many things do. You jam with guys a few times and then people are just like, not really a thing. And then, he reached out to me to come play with these guys, which he already had Ricky on board and Kyle, and actually our original second guitar player Mark. I say original second guitar player, but it's like I wouldn't even really consider us a band at that point back then, because again, it was in that phase of just meeting each other, trying to figure things out. And that was I first came and played with them. I think it was either the very end of February or the very beginning of March in 2020. So literally right before the world shut down. And it was an interesting time. And, I already knew Jim, resonated with the other guys pretty quickly. And so I was like, yeah, I'm willing to, let's kind of see where this goes kinds of thing. Cause it was, they had some,
we had like 3 rough songs.
Yeah. Very rough songs, right? In terms of like, it was still very obvious of like, okay, we're, as you would expect, we're still very much trying to figure out what this is. Cause something honestly that appealed to me from the get-go is that it wasn't, it wasn't something that formed from the outset of, we're going to do a metalcore band. We're going to do a deathcore band. Like there was never those parameters put on it. It was just kind of like, hey, we all like various heavy music. Like let's jam together and kind of see what we figure out. And so like that was appealing to me. And then, honestly, like right after I said, I'd love to keep playing, Mark actually stepped away because he's like, again, for no animosity or anything, he was just like, hey, I'm not really like, I don't really think I want to play anything heavy right now. And we were like, okay, man, totally cool. Like I get it. Like that's fine. And so then it was just myself, Ricky, Jim, and Kyle. And then obviously like 2 weeks later was when things really started to get hairy and we all stayed inside for months at a time. And so that I hesitate to call it a blessing in disguise for this band, but it really allowed us to take a step back and, for one, collaborate in a way none of us had really collaborated before, in terms of truly just like sending guitar profiles back and forth with each other and finessing material and kind of learning about each other's intricacies and nuance as musicians in a remote format, which is something none of us had ever done before. Obviously, because we had never really experienced that in our lives, of obviously being secluded, but also like we're all used to working with people locally. Now I know I have plenty of musicians I know, as I'm sure you do, of who like collaborate with each other across state lines, and so they're kind of used to that more remote function of working, which that was new for all of us. But it, in addition to kind of learning about each other in a more interesting way, I think it really helped us start to refine a sound that way, of like just really exploring the material in different ways and kind of being very analytical about the material and pulling it apart, so that by the time we were able to physically get back together in like late 2020 when things started to ease up a little bit before kind of that second wave came and things got pretty dicey again. And that was actually when we brought Dan in, because Dan and Kyle had worked together at Guitar Center, right?
Yeah. We worked together at Guitar Center in like 2012 for like a year or so.
Yeah.
And like he had just posted on Facebook one day, you know, hey, we're looking for a guitar player in my band. And I had always been like, I hadn't even played like a 7-string guitar before. I had always been like standard tuning, droppy thrash metal guy, you know, and so this was a whole new like world for me. And it really introduced me to a lot of new material that I had been sleeping on for a long time, you know, so really happy that I joined in, got me into a whole new like kind of category of music that I had probably never would have gotten. This like the furthest away from, you know, the thrash stuff that I had ventured was like Death and Gojira, you know, like that was like kind of the furthest I had ventured away from like the Metallicas and the Megadeths of the world, but it's definitely a welcome change. So really glad that they brought me in for sure.
And that was cool too, because like by the time we brought Dan in, like again, we had refined that sound a bit. And like we had more, you know, it wasn't like when the rest of us first started, we were figuring it out. It's like, I think, you know, we had that benefit of, you know, Dan came down to audition and we're like, hey, like this is what the band is now, which is still ill-defined, but it's ill-defined in terms of subgenre. But I think we've settled on sort of like what we want to do stylistically and thematically with the music, and you know, Dan kind of helped solidify that. And then we were able to physically get together, but you know, it was late 2020, so I don't need to tell anybody that things were still weird for a while. So that's why it on one hand, it's been building a lot of anticipation for us, having essentially had this band going for 2 years, and just like, you know, 4 months ago, having finally put out our first EP and now being ready to play our first show. But it's also, again, I think allowed us to really hone in on what we want this to be before kind of unveiling it publicly. Which I think has been a big benefit and something we're excited about.
Yep.
Give you plenty of time to learn the shit too.
Well, since you're talking about the EP Turmoil, one, I want to start with the EP art. What was the inspiration for the creature on the front? Because I'm a big horror fan, and it gives me a lot of vibes on a lot of different things. So what was the initial thought? And I'll tell you what I think when I see it.
Yeah, it's an idea I had a while ago, and it's just been floating around in my head in terms of just strictly from a visual level of the candles on the antlers, because I love the concept of the Wendigo. I think that's such a fascinating myth in the history of this country, dating back obviously to the indigenous population having come up with it, and it just thematically fits very well with sort of the overall concepts of this band in terms of, you know, like our lyrical content and direction and kind of what we want to portray and comment on. Where I wouldn't say we're a political band by any means, but very, you know, most of what I write lyrically is a very like kind of societal commentary, whether it you know, some of it is political, some of it's theological, really just like kind of examining my own thoughts and opinions on those various subjects. But because even the name of the band like dates back to you know, the Fallen Monarch. That is it a redwood tree? It's something in San Francisco.
It's a redwood tree.
Yeah, it's because it was actually when we first formed. Jim happened to be out on a vacation in San Francisco and like saw the Fallen Monarch, which is this. It's like this fully uprooted redwood tree that is and so it's like all the base is fully exposed, and it's just like it's this very powerful dead piece of nature, right? And it's a humbling thing to see, and I think thematically that's a big part of what we try to go for too, in terms of, especially myself lyrically, in terms of sort of recognizing the place people have in sort of existence and the planet and all that. That's something we hit on a lot. So really all those themes seem to tie in well with the idea of like, you know, like the Wendigo, like a corrupted human being that you know, that overstepped their own bounds and you know, was a victim of that hubris. And then my my particular illustration style is a lot more kind of bold and graphic.
Yeah.
And isn't something, it's like, it's not something I really envisioned this being. So with Ricky having a much more like painterly style, I felt like it would serve the concept of the art a lot stronger, and he nailed it. So I was happy to give that to him.
And kind of looking at it when you're talking, because I'm looking at it right now, when you're talking about the candle, also what I noticed too is it almost appears above the head, like as if there was a crown that was fashioned, but it almost seems like it's slightly disappearing, which I definitely feel like fits into that concept. But real quick, before we get any further, have either one of you seen the Netflix movie, The Ritual?
Yes.
Okay.
Love that movie. That's one of my favorite monster designs in probably like the past like 10 years.
That's the first thing I thought when I saw it. I've seen Antlers recently, so I didn't think Wendigo right away, but I definitely, when I saw this, it made me think of the godlike creature deity, because I had to look it up real quick. I'm not even going to try to pronounce what the hell that thing's called.
Nope.
But it's I think so. It's an offspring of Loki. So
it has a much longer Nordic name, I believe.
I'm the one who butchers everyone's name, so I'm glad. But yeah, no, it's visually, it catches you from the moment you look at it, and it definitely when I saw you guys had posted on a group that I'm in, when I went to go check out what you guys sounded like, definitely album art immediately grabbed me, and I was just like, okay, I like this visual definitely gave me something. And then when you listen to the music, I feel like it definitely does tie into that sound. Now question wise, and talking about that before we go any further, do you guys feel like just with like, and let's be honest, because I mean, when we talk about like horror and stuff like that, there is nothing more scarier than the horror of real life. So do you guys feel like with everything that was going on in the world, you guys are trying to write music at the same time, how inspiring the horror of everything was for that?
I mean, that's why the EP is called Turmoil.
Exactly.
It was that felt like that word kind of captured those couple of years in a nutshell. And even though it is just 3 songs, it very much I mean, I speak to it lyrically a lot, but I settled on the lyrics I settled on because I felt like they very much played into the aggressive, chaotic nature of the material that the guys kind of presented to me. But it's, so focused on personal turmoil, societal turmoil, worldwide turmoil, across just those 3 songs. I mean, just touching on loss, touching on the frustration that you see around us at any given time over these like very chaotic couple of years that we've had to deal with. And I mean, I write about very specific things to myself, certainly, whether they be something experiences or just opinions on kind of big events that have happened. But I think lyrics are at their most effective when they have enough ambiguity to lean more into a higher theme so that it can just resonate a little bit more universally and people can attach to that on a more base level, as opposed to like maybe they didn't go through exactly what I went through. And so I try not to be that specific in the lyrics, but definitely I think both lyrically and musically, it's incredibly reflective of how we've all felt these past couple of years.
Yeah. And I would say like, it's like for guitar, at least for me too, I'm definitely a fan of like riffs that are fun to play, while also having like some chaos. So I think in terms of describing how I felt, like, I don't actually know if you even know this, Adam, but like when we originally wrote like the first riff for Blight, which is the 3rd track on our EP, it was Jimmy. He's gonna listen to this and tell me, hopefully I'm right on this, but he said he wanted a song that felt like he was like trapped in some type of prison and like wanting to escape, and just like the emotion of feeling like you need to like get out. And that beginning riff to Blight, little black metal feeling, a lot of chaos like sprinkled in. It's a lot of stuff like that I think drove a lot of the riffs. So it always comes from an idea. from someone in terms of riff writing. And obviously a lot of it was centered around being stuck inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in just looking at your lyrics right here, I think the first line of Chain of Grief kind of just says everything it needs to say. Living life consumed by what's lost is no life that you would want for me in weakness. Such a powerful, like, just that first section right there, just like, once again, I was immediately drawn into you guys by the art, but like lyrically and reading lyrics, man, it's just, it kind of speaks to, I mean, I think even myself as an artist in the last couple of years, you know, I feel like my writing's changed because I think at this point we've all kind of questioned what is going on, because unfortunately, you know, due to everything going on in the world, you know, we've lost people. We've seen people who are dealing with emotions they've never dealt with before, and we've kind of been closed off from one another. So I think a lot of what you guys are doing musically kind of is exerting that feeling, that just the dread that comes with what we're facing right now. And in some respects, I mean, this still isn't really over yet. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely feel like, you know, you guys are definitely tapped into a lot of pain that a lot of people may be feeling right now.
Yeah. And I mean, hopefully it helps. I appreciate you saying that about the lyrics. I mean, like I said, through most of my musical journey, I've been a guitar player. I haven't written a ton of lyrics before. So this band has been a good challenge for that. And there has been no shortage of I guess emotion to tap into for music like this lately, which has kind of been my challenge with it in the past, right? Is that for the most part, I'm not a typical like fairly like tortured person, I guess. So like, I don't know, like I haven't, everyone has their baggage, but I feel like overall I haven't had like a lot of severe trauma in my life or anything like that. So I don't, I mean, Chain of Grief is about some specific stuff, but I think that's why for the most part, I lean a lot towards just kind of a general, what the fuck is going on attitude towards some of this stuff. And certainly, trying to, but like by the same token, it's like, I don't want us to be like a pandemic band, if that makes sense. God, like only just like relying on all of that. And you know, I feel like it's like, 'cause that art that is too predicated on that premise is like going to have a really short shelf life. You know what I mean? Like, and on top of just because, like, especially right now, it's like we're all exhausted by it, man. Like, I watched, I think a couple weeks ago, like that Judd Apatow movie on Netflix, The Bubble, and I'm like, this isn't necessarily bad, but it's just like it's about people. It's literally a super meta movie about people making a movie during the pandemic, and I'm like, dude, like we're still kind of in this. Like, I don't want to watch something about this kind of thing. You know what I mean?
It's my escapism.
Exactly. And like, and I think we do still, you know, as much as we're channeling a lot of the emotions that we ourselves and a lot of folks are feeling right now, we don't want to, like, we still want to have that catharsis for people and that escapism for people, and not make them feel like we're just like, you know, I'm not like directly like writing lyrics like about being stuck inside.
No, I mean, it like I said, I think lyrically, I still feel like it fits for anything. And then the other thing too that I really enjoy about you guys remind me of like old school like deathcore, like when it first really popped off, and then almost with like a new school look on it. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely love a lot of the riffage that's on there. You know, shout out to you guys. Definitely love what you guys do, because me as a vocalist, I'm always paying attention to the lyrics. But if you can get me to pay attention to the guitars, you've done something. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so
it's really funny you say that, because like my musical journey personally as a guitar player, I was in a band called Ruins of Tomorrow in Denver, Colorado, and we were definitely a straight up deathcore band in like 2009 to 2012 before I left. And I love those guys, but after there was a lot of stress with that. And when I quit that band, I kind of gave up guitar for like 7 years. And I would pick it up occasionally, but wasn't interested in being in a band or really writing anything to put out. So when Jim approached me in Planet Fitness and was like, "Are you interested?" It was like at that point where it'd been like 6 or 7 years. And I was like, you know what? Like, I should just give this a shot and see what happens. Like, I was very honestly nervous because I hadn't played in like 6 or 7 years. So it's funny, like this EP specifically, like we've written a whole bunch of new stuff since then, but at least for me, in terms of riffage, I was kind of picking up where I left off from like 2010, 2012-ish era in terms of like deathcore. But like Adam said, when we all got together, I didn't want to be like a cookie cutter deathcore band. There's 1,000 of those, and you can find, just jump on Spotify and you can find your fill. So I wanted something unique, but that is definitely like a specific influence. Like what got me into extreme metal was like Suicide Silence back in like 2007, 2008. And that's when I picked up my first 7-string guitar, and we play in drop A. So I appreciate that you say that, because it's definitely like a little bit of nostalgia and like my whole roots in terms of like just heavy, fast pounding riffs. And I'm sure we're going to evolve as we go, but this EP specifically was centered around that.
Yeah, I think we're already evolving past that.
Yes, yeah, we are.
Because it's like, like we kind of hit on earlier, like our influences are all over the place. Like, and like Dan mentioned, he's an old school thrash guy. Like Ricky loves tons of extreme music. You know, I'm into a lot of like weird post metal and grind and stuff like that. Like Jim's kind of a metalcore dude. Like Kyle is super into like the most progressive, complicated music you could listen to. And so it's like, which I think is the case with a lot of bands, where it's like all that stuff kind of swirls together to create something a little more unique as you sort of learn the intricacies of each other's musical identities. Like I know I wouldn't have wanted to do this project if it was just cookie cutter deathcore, because it's like, for one, that feels really dated, and two, it's like that's just not something I would like. I don't have. I feel like that, especially vocally, like that style is like very boxed into a certain thing, and like I just from just purely from my anatomy as a human being, like I just don't have a low voice. Like I don't really do like guttural death metal vocals, and I don't want to fake it. So I try to just like, you know, I'm a big fan of, again, having being a vocalist is the minority of my musical journey, mostly having been a guitar player. But the times I have done vocals, especially in this band, is, you know, I try to really embrace what my natural voice would be and not like try to sound like one thing or another. Yeah. Like it's been, I remember I mentioned to the guys, it's challenging. We actually, for various reasons at this first show we have to play, we were asked to perform a cover, and we were like, oh crap, we don't know any covers, and I won't say what it is, but it's I'll tell you off recording so you can but it's been one we want to surprise folks when we do play it for sure. Next weekend. But it, you know, it was a song I knew very well, so it's one of those challenging things. I'm like, I don't want to just karaoke it and like try to sound like the original vocal performance. I want to perform this song in my voice, and this is like, it's hard. Like I kind of find myself like drifting a little bit too much into mimicry at times, and it's like having not ever learned or performed a lot of covers in my time, I'm like, wow, especially vocally, I'm like, wow, this is actually really hard to make sure you're doing like your version of it and not just like trying to sound like the recording everybody knows,
or not trying to MGK it.
Well, that's kind of our general ethos for everything. A good barometer for life.
Exactly. Adam tends not to smoke while he's trying to sing.
So before we get out of here, man, I got one last question for you guys. And with everything that you guys are doing, man, sound wise, what's something you feel like people should take away when they either listen or come to see Fallen Monarch?
I think we really want listeners to like go on a journey with the material and not feel like it's just a constant barrage of one extreme or another. You know, we, especially as we've been writing more towards doing a full-length record, I think as, you know, discovering more of our identity, I think we specifically want to do a full-length record because I feel like that will be the proper format for us to really get out what we want to express artistically, in terms of, you know, like our songs are fairly long. Most of our songs are around the 5-minute mark. And while we're immensely proud of Turmoil, it was intended as an introduction to the band. Like that's why it's only 3 songs. And it's frankly, those literally are the first 3 songs we wrote. So at this point, they're still pretty fresh to everybody else, but it's like those songs are kind of 2 years old at this point for us.
The only 3 that were finished when I joined.
We're ready to like get out there and start showing more of the new stuff. And I think that, while Turmoil, I think, does serve as that excellent introduction to kind of what we want to do in terms of showing a little bit of that dynamic that we want to express in terms of not being balls to the wall 100% of the time, and like having some peaks and valleys and dynamic to what we express. I think the material we're working on for the full length will show that even more. And, a full record will give us the breathing room to explore a lot of those extremes and get through it. I hesitate to call this band humorless. That's certainly not who we are as people, but it's fairly direct in what we're trying to express. And like, I don't want to, I want it to come off as that like cohesive vision of again, it's like, I think it's why we settled on that name Turmoil, but like we lean towards like these descriptors of like somber and chaotic and like sad but intense, and like playing like primarily negative emotions, I suppose, but like wanting people to come out of that feeling a more sense of catharsis than like feeling bummed out. You know what I mean? Like we want to express that intensity on the varying ends of the spectrum to kind of help other people through those same emotions that we're processing through the music that we're writing. And I think that's ultimately what we want to express with this band. I don't know if you guys have any additional thoughts on it. Or...
The only thing that I would say too is like to go on what Adam was saying. I love nothing more than when I'm listening to a band and I can put my headphones on, I can close my eyes, and they have like a soundscape that they've created, that's very deep and very wide. And I feel like Turmoil, we didn't really have enough time. And like for me, at least, I had just started writing again. So with this new full length, something that I personally want to explore musically is, like Adam was saying, those peaks and valleys, and introducing some other sounds that, aren't just guitar, bass, or drums, and to create more of a story that you can close your eyes and you can kind of feel the space in which you're sitting in terms of the music. So that's something that I feel like I would have wanted more on Turmoil, and we didn't have it. But on the full length, I'm definitely going to be focused personally on like creating places that you can sit at and like you feel like you're there. And
might even be some clean guitars, even though it'll make Kyle mad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is obviously like Dan, you mentioned that we'd pretty much wrapped up Turmoil by the time you joined. Like what I've been, and you've taken our newer material has like more dance influence with it now too. Like it's like, what do you kind of want to express through it?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Adam hit the nail on the head when he mentioned the catharsis, because that's always been like, if I have a goal for what I want somebody to get out of listening to music that I write, it's that they're like, you know what? Yep. I'm feeling that. Fuck that. Whatever made you mad made me mad too, and like I'm with you. And kind of gets that like kind of unity feeling, like we're all in this together kind of vibe, and I want people to get that we're all going through some bullshit, and hopefully the music can help people get through it in some way.
Music will get us through.
Yeah.
Yes, man. No, see, you're all here just coming out with episode titles and stuff. But before we get out of here, man, I just want to say thank you guys for joining me. Real quick, you can find them at fallenmonarchcult.com, Facebook Fallen Monarch Cult, Instagram Fallen Monarch Cult. Love the unity there. And as well as hit them up on Bandcamp, especially when that Friday when they start waiving fees, man, and pick up Turmoil. It's an amazing EP. And once again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.